When leaving his surgery on the morning of April 16, Dr. Bernard Rieu felt something soft under his foot. It was a dead rat lying in the middle of the landing. On the spur of the moment, he kicked it to one side, and without giving it a further thought, continued on his way downstairs. That evening, when Dr. Rieu was standing in the entrance, feeling for the latchkey in his pocket before starting up the stairs to his apartment, he saw a big rat coming toward him from the dark end of the passage. It moved uncertainly, and its fur was sopping wet. The animal stopped and seemed to be trying to get its balance, moved forward again toward the doctor, halted again, then spun around on itself with a little squeal and fell on its side. Its mouth was slightly open, and blood was spurting from it. After gazing at it for a moment, the doctor went upstairs. He wasn't thinking about the rat. That glimpse of spurting blood had switched his thoughts back to something that had been on his mind all day. Next day, April 17, at 8 o'clock, the concierge buttonholed the doctor as he was going out. Some young scallywags, he said, had dumped 3 dead rats in the hall. They'd obviously been caught in traps with very strong springs, as they were bleeding profusely. The concierge had lingered in the doorway for quite a while, holding the rats by their legs and keeping a sharp eye on the passers-by, on the off chance that the miscreants would give themselves away by grinning or by some facetious remark. His watch had been in vain. "But I'll nab 'em all right," said Monsieur Michel hopefully. Much puzzled, Rieu decided to begin his round in the outskirts of the town, where his poorer patients lived. The scavenging in these districts was done late in the morning, and as he drove his car along the straight, dusty streets, he cast glances at the garbage cans aligned along the edge of the sidewalk. In one street alone, the doctor counted as many as a dozen rats deposited on the vegetable and other refuse in the cans. Rieu soon discovered that the rats were the great topic of conversation in that part of the town. Next morning, it was April 18, when the doctor was bringing back his mother from the station, he found Monsieur Michel looking still more out of sorts. The stairway from the cellar to the attics was strewn with dead rats, 10 or a dozen of them. The garbage cans of all the houses in the street were full of rats. However, he rang up the municipal office. He knew the man in charge of the department concerned with the extermination of vermin, and he asked him if he'd heard about all the rats that were coming out to die in the open. Yes, Marcier knew all about it. In fact, 50 rats had been found in his offices, which were near the wharves. To tell the truth, he was rather perturbed. Did the doctor think it meant anything serious? Rieu couldn't give a definite opinion, but he thought the sanitary service should take action of some kind. Marcier agreed. "And if you think it's really worth the trouble, I'll get an order issued as well." "It certainly is worth the trouble," Rieu replied. His charwoman had just told him that several hundred dead rats had been collected in the big factory where her husband worked. It was about this time that our townsfolk began to show signs of uneasiness. For from April 18 onwards, quantities of dead or dying rats were found in factories and warehouses. In some cases, the animals were killed to put an end to their agony. From the outer suburbs to the center of the town, in all the byways where the doctor's duties took him, in every thoroughfare, rats were piled up in garbage cans or lying in long lines in the gutters. The evening papers that day took up the matter and inquired whether or not the city fathers were going to take steps, and what emergency measures were contemplated to abate this particularly disgusting nuisance. Actually, the municipality had not contemplated doing anything at all. But now a meeting was convened to discuss the situation. An order was transmitted to the sanitary service to collect the dead rats at daybreak every morning. When the rats had been collected, 2 municipal trucks were to take them to be burned in the town incinerator. But the situation worsened in the following days. There were more and more dead vermin in the streets, and the collectors had bigger truckloads every morning. On the 4th day, the rats began to come out and die in batches. From basements, cellars, and sewers, they emerged in long, wavering files into the light of day, swayed helplessly, then did a sort of pirouette and fell dead at the feet of the horrified onlookers. At night, in passages and alleys, their shrill little death cries could be clearly heard. In the mornings, the bodies were found lining the gutters, each with a gout of blood, like a red flower, on its tapering muzzle. Some were bloated and already beginning to rot, others rigid, with their whiskers still erect. Even in the busy heart of the town, you found them piled in little heaps on landings and in backyards. Some stole forth to die singly in the halls of public offices, in school playgrounds, and even on café terraces. Our townsfolk were amazed to find such busy centres as the Place d'Armes, the boulevards, the promenade along the waterfront, dotted with repulsive little corpses. After the daily clean-up of the town, which took place at sunrise, there was a brief respite. Then, gradually, the rats began to appear again, in numbers that went on increasing throughout the day. People out at night would often feel underfoot the squelchy roundness of a still warm body. It was as if the earth on which our houses stood were being purged of its secreted humours, thrusting up to the surface the abscesses and pus clots that had been forming in its entrails. You must picture the consternation of our little town, hitherto so tranquil, and now, out of the blue, shaken to its core, like a quite healthy man who, all of a sudden, feels his temperature shoot up and the blood seething like wildfire in his veins. Things went so far that the Ronsdock Information Bureau, inquiries on all subjects promptly and accurately answered, which ran a free information talk on the radio by way of publicity, began its talk by announcing that no less than 6,231 rats had been collected and burned in a single day, April 25. Giving, as it did, an ampler and more precise view of the scene daily enacted before our eyes, this amazing figure administered a jolt to the public nerves. Hitherto, people had merely grumbled at a stupid, rather obnoxious visitation. They now realized that this strange phenomenon, whose scope couldn't be measured and whose origins escaped detection, had something vaguely menacing about it.